All right. Hi there, everybody.
Hi, Kim.
How you doing? Thank you for coming today, even those of you behind me. So this is our very first 101 class. Let's see what happens. I'm slightly terrified. I haven't been one of these in a very long time. So
Riding a bike, right?
yeah, we'll see.
I haven't rode a bike in a long time either.
So now
I may need training wheels before this is over with.
that's okay.
So, what I wanted to talk about tonight was spiritual paths, touch on the charge of the goddess, and ethics, because it all ties together. So, your spiritual path, it's a very individual thing. Whatever you decide to do, whatever you decide to study, that's going to be your decision. I can give you tools, I can give you ideas, but I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I was raised Wiccan from the time I was about 6, and yes, I'm old. So
22 is not old.
yeah, okay, whatever. So in 1972, my parents started hanging out with these people called the Seekers. They lived in Pleasant Hope, and we'd go out there and they'd have big barbecues and little get-togethers, and then they'd have seances. And the kids were supposed to go someplace else while the grown-ups were doing the seance. Excuse me. But of course, Mom and Dad would always tell us everything that happened during the seance. So I got pretty accustomed to being around mysticism really early on. And then the folks that were doing that sold all their stuff and went and joined this cult called Bo and Peep so they could meet Jesus in the desert. Oh. So that kind of ended the Seekers. Anyway.
It's a little Heaven Gatey.
Yeah, it's exactly Heaven's Gatey. It's the same people.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were never seen again.
Well, the folks that we went to, they came back.
Oh.
And they were like, no,
Yeah,
never mind.
Jesus didn't come meet them in the desert, and they said, well, we're going to go home. So,
At least they weren't there back in the 90s.
no, they were not. So,
Whole different
So,
concept.
yeah.
Nowadays.
They were just bonkers, seriously. Anyway, so while they were going to these people's house and doing stuff, they invited Gavin and Yvonne Frost to come down. At that time, Gavin and Yvonne were living in Salem, Missouri. At the time, Gavin and Yvonne were running the Church and School of Wicca out of Salem, Missouri, on their pig farm. And at some point in the mid-70s, they decided to move out to North Carolina. We ended up moving to Arkansas for a while, and then we all moved out to North Carolina, and my parents worked at the church and school for a while. They helped with the correspondence courses. Of course, by the time I was all of 11, woo, so worldly, and I knew everything's happened. We came back to Missouri. I actually got initiated when I was 14, which I think I was too young, but it was my mom's decision at that time. So that's that. That's how long I've been doing this. So I'm just curious. I want to know why you've chosen this spiritual path. What is it that has spoken to you about this? I did leave and go to a Baptist church for a couple of years.
Same here.
Yeah, but then I was like, this is totally not my deal.
Yeah.
I came back. And for me, it's because I believe the earth is a living entity and we need to take care of the earth. And if we don't learn to live in harmony with the planet and everything that inhabits this planet and take care of it, we're essentially signing our own death warrants. And we need to learn how to get along with everybody. God, I wish it were possible. But I've felt a lot of energy and experienced a lot of interesting things just walking in the woods by myself or in the middle of a ritual with a whole bunch of people. And for me, it's a real tangible thing that I can almost touch, but it works for me. It's my path, and it works for me. So, anybody want to share? Like, why are you here? Scott's here because Jody made him. So.
I never thought I was reminded to be. I was raised in a Methodist church, and I started having issues when I noticed that the biggest turnout happened to be on the first Sunday, which is also free coffee and donut day.
Uh-huh.
So I also had a big problem with being cast in the play as Saul. I learned about that parable later.
Oh.
Yeah, surprise. But things didn't make sense to me, and questioning things always seemed to be wrong. And most people that I talked to with asking questions in the church were met with hard stop. Don't ask, just believe. And that never sat well with me. And so in the early 2000s, I spent some time with my sister, who at that time had been deep in as soon as she was able to. So I experienced the UU church and multiple different faiths at that time, and had an awakening, I suppose, of there are other options. And I want to say that a primary path is Norse, but I've been exposed to and worked with multiple faiths and belief structures. I come with a hard bent of skepticism, and then keep getting shown things that are different. That energy manipulation is a thing. Prayer is magic. It all exists as a manifestation of will to me. And so, why are we killing each other over the same thing?
Yeah.
So, I just want to gain the knowledge to find a truth.
Your truth.
And experience by good discourse, one can find what makes people tick. And a better understanding of where you come from and how you believe helps me understand you and why you think that way, and we can have a mutual understanding.
Awesome. How many of you guys come from a Christian background?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
Isn't that why we're here?
And then to find the surprises in that, like Ozark folklore.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It's like
I love that
straight traditional
Kitchen witch.
Celtic kitchen witch, the wee ones, the
Yeah.
folklore.
Yeah.
See, like with me, yes, I was partially raised Christian, but as soon as my mom and dad split up, mom went New Age. And that's when she pulled me into it. And she exposed me to all of this different stuff. But then she also flat out sat me down and said, you choose. You choose what you want to do. I will support you in whatever. And eventually, over 20 years ago, saw a thing for a Yule celebration at the UU church, and that is when I met her.
There's all these weird people at the UU church, man.
But I studied under Kate for a while. Was an initiate of Greenleaf for a while, and
Well,
then
you're stuck with that.
Yeah, I know. But then left for a while. Got involved with some guy, and he was more agnostic than anything, and that kind of stuff freaked him out. Me being the submissive little girl, went and ended up following him and became a non-practicing pagan for many, many years. And so now I'm here to relearn what I have forgotten. So I even did the Christian route for a couple of years too, and then I'm looking around and hearing all these people. I'm like, you guys are nuts. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, raised Christian. Been married Southern Baptist.
I'm sorry.
Me too. Left that mess.
The only cool Southern Baptist.
Kiddo's dad and I moved down here in 2001, and I was already disillusioned. I'd been kind of shunned from the Methodist church I grew up in, not officially or anything like that, because that's not how it works, but when you grow up from toddlerhood in the same church and all of a sudden they realize that you're 19 and you're married and divorced and oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, whispering behind the hands because they're all your mom's friends or your grandparents' friends. It just kind of, and I was already not really comfortable there anyway. Moved down here, one thing and another, and caught a show on cable. Hey, this looks right. This makes more sense.
It looks right. It was a train wreck.
I forget what the episode was. I think it was Samhain, actually, to be fair. And they were talking about come meet us at the Oneness Center.
Yeah.
So I grabbed dude and we went. And I made the thing of, okay, well, it's a bunch of witches. I gotta look like a witch. So I show up
She
in this
was so goth.
black long sleeve velvet dress with a hooded cloak, gothed out makeup, boots, and the whole thing. And everyone's here in jeans and a t-shirt. I'm like, That was November of 2001. And I think I was part of the first 101 class you did.
Actually, I've been doing one-on-ones for quite a while.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that was the first one. Maybe you'd started it again.
It was probably another
with
round.
Wolf.
Yeah.
I just know you'd said something about the first one you were doing with them.
Yeah.
I think is what it was. But anyway, wandered away not from paganism but from group. When kiddo's dad and I divorced, just one thing and another. And I found myself falling towards Norse, primarily because somebody won't leave me alone. When tricksters call you, you tend to listen. Yeah, I'm working on that. I'm working
with that.
Yeah, this is a recent thing. Have to learn how to accept chaos and change in order to. So this is where we're working. I'm back to doing this, trying to ground again. I've been way out crazy for the last several years, and so I'm back to where I started. So I'm just trying to get back to center and keep what I've learned, keep where I am, but get back to roots. Thank you. Words.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, that way I have a little more background because someone has mentioned wanting to be a witch child.
Oh, good. You can teach them stuff, and there's a scout group you can take them to.
Oh, we're already doing it.
Scout.
We're already doing that.
Cool. So, yeah, everybody comes from a different background, right? I mean, I don't necessarily come from the Christian background that a lot of people do come from, but I feel like sometimes I have a little trouble understanding what's going on in somebody's head when they come from a Christian background. But that's my shortcoming. That's just because of the way I was raised.
But you're lucky that
But-
you don't have to unlearn or
Yeah, there's
re-examine teachings that are not.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I just grew up believing without having any question about it. Believing that magic was real, believing that there are entities that live in different planes within the same space that we occupy. But I was allowed to question stuff if I had a question. So
Yeah.
that's the thing I never really understood was how can you have a spirituality if you have a question, you're not allowed to ask it.
Blind faith.
Yeah,
They
and I
expect
don't like
blind
that.
faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
neither. Very much blind.
I've always found that there's two different people, religious people. There's the religious people that are born being told this is what you believe and that's it. And then there's the ones who come to their belief on their own. And the ones
Right.
that come to the belief on their own tend to have a stronger belief.
I think so.
So
Yeah.
that first group is called sheep.
Yes.
They tend to be more open and they tend to be able to have discourse. And
Yeah, and discourse is
discourse,
important.
in my experience, talking about faith with people that have it strengthen both parties.
Right. And you should be able to have questions. You should be able to ask questions. And if a person that you go to doesn't have an answer for you, both of you look together. you
Yeah.
know? I've done that a lot.
Google it.
So Google it.
Yes.
The great
Oh.
God Google.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so everybody has their own reason for being here. Everybody has their own spiritual path. If you're comfortable with sharing it, that's great. If you're not, that's great too. I'm totally cool with that. Obviously, I have no problem telling the whole world where I am and what I'm doing. I used to be on TV doing that terrible train wreck of a show. So,
Some of us-
Here, I'll give you a background for me.
okay.
Okay. Raised, well, my family was not religious. My father wasn't, because I didn't know until later. A little surprise. I was told growing up, you can, whatever religion you want, just go for it. So the Baptist church down the street seemed fun. Yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of late nights. But I grew up Baptist and seen Southern Baptist, and then I started, there's other religions, why don't I check them out too? And then I started studying different religions when I got older, teen years. And my father said, we are atheists, right? What?
Surprise.
Thanks. And my mother said, and I think we came from aliens. Can I know the theology on that one, please?
The Pleiadians.
Yeah, but
Aliens.
You don't have any hair, man. You can't do that, right?
Oh.
which drove me down the aisle of, okay, let's start studying different religions and getting the basic facts of different religions, from Norse, Celtic, to African, to, the weird ones that have cropped up around here in the United States.
Yeah.
Um,
They do wackadoodles.
And if there's any path that I could have chosen, I've kind of settled on my Native American past. It's kind of a calling, especially when you have a better understanding of why the energies around us flow and why certain spirits like to talk to some of us. And what really got my brain sorted out on that was Gavin and Yvonne Frost.
Yeah.
Kind of give me hints on what to do and where to go. And the introduction with Kate wasn't with the pagan show. It was with a girlfriend at the time who was studying different religions, and she dragged me along.
Yeah.
She quit, I stayed.
Yeah.
My introduction with Kate wasn't the pagan show either, so.
No.
It was a copy of The Spider.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the spider.
Back in the dark ages, before we even had the show, we had a newsletter. So.
I dragged a girlfriend to belly dance. She's gone. I'm here.
I was gonna say, I got into belly dance through school, so I got to know you
Yeah.
that way.
Why am I in the middle of all of this? What
You
is
drive
that?
me to belly dancing.
Or you are the spider in the middle of the web.
So you drive me to belly dancing.
Anyway.
You've entrapped us all in some
Yes.
way.
I just tag along like a lost puppy.
You try and get away.
Yeah, I know.
We keep coming back.
I know.
She'll release us, and then we're like,
Well,
no.
the Kool-Aid's good.
Yes, Okay, so way back 100 years ago, there was an author named Doreen Valiente who wrote a book of poetry. She claimed to be a witch and to have studied with someone in Great Britain that was, it was questionable whether or not the person actually existed or not, or if Doreen actually studied with this person or anything. She's somewhat responsible for Gerald Gardner. And there again, I'm kind of, the history on that, you can go back and read all the history on it, and he said one thing, researchers tried to find everything that he said, and then he turned around and say something else, and it was like, well, now wait a minute, is it this? So there's, the beginnings of Wicca are kind of murky, but if you've ever belonged to any of the mystical organizations like the Masons or seen anything from the Order of the Golden Dawn or anything along those lines, there are a lot of similarities between those organizations and the rituals that Gerald Gardner had in his Book of Shadows. Not saying he just stole stuff, but the thing about the rituals that are used by the mystical orders is a lot of those also came from Catholic worship. So here's all these rituals that have been around forever and ever and ever, and they've kind of worked their way into the Wiccan religion and a lot of the pagan celebrations and rituals. But they had to start somewhere. I mean, I can't say for sure where they started. How do we know that the Catholics didn't steal it all from the pagans? You know, they did build their churches on top of pagan temples.
Their
Lord knows
holidays on top of pagan
they
holidays.
stole our
Yeah.
holidays.
They stole our holidays. They stole our gods and goddesses.
It's easier to convert a populace if you go, hey, it's similar.
Yeah. Look, it's just like yours.
It's the wish version rather than the actual version.
There you go. I love
Ours is
that.
generic and cheaper.
Yes.
Religion light.
So anyway, one of the things that Doreen Valiente wrote was the Charge of the Goddess. And
Okay, can you spell her name, please?
DOREEN VALIENTE. Thank you. You're welcome. I have here Spiral Dance, which is written by, oh, I'm losing stuff. Written by Starhawk, who is a person out in California. This is like the 20-year anniversary edition. I have had the original, I've had the 10-year, and now I have the 20-year. She kind of changed the Charge of the Goddess a little bit, so if you've heard it before and this sounds wonky, that's why. It says, listen to the words of the great mother who of old was called Artemis, Astarte, Dione, Melusine, Aphrodite, Caradwin, Diana, Erenrude, Bridget, and by many other names. Whenever you have need of anything, once in the month, and better it be when the moon is full, you shall assemble in some secret place and adore the spirit of me, who is queen of all the wise. You shall be free from slavery, and as a sign that you be free, you shall be naked in your rights. Sing, feast, dance, make music and love, all in my presence, for mine is the ecstasy of the spirit, and mine also is the joy on earth. For my law is love unto all beings. Mine is the secret that opens upon the door of youth, and mine is the cup of wine of life that is the cauldron of Caradwin, that is the holy grail of immortality. I give the knowledge of the spirit eternal, and beyond death I give peace and freedom, and reunion with those that have gone before. Nor do I demand aught of sacrifice, for behold, I am the mother of all things, and my love is poured upon the earth. Now then, let's talk about ethics. The reason I like that, one of the things you may hear from time to time is all acts of love and pleasure are mine, and that's in another section of that. I didn't read the whole thing, so but the Wiccan read is this freaking long. No, if
Your
you,
hands weren't far enough.
the actual poem that the Wiccan read comes from is extremely long. This one is actually written it all out by hand, and I'm sure it took quite a while.
Yes, it did.
The one stanza that we use the most, that is the one that we try to adhere to, is harming none, do what thou wilt. Which means, as long as you're not harming anybody, including yourself, your friends, somebody in the proximity, everything we try to do with as little harm as possible. And I know that a lot of people will just nitpick that to pieces. However, things like people who eat meat, if you thank the animal that you're going to eat, that kind of helps mitigate that. I grew up on farms and ranches, so a lot of times we had meat that we ourselves butchered out. So before you kill the animal, you say, I'm sorry, but you're going to help sustain me, thank you. You know, not fun, but I struggled for a really long time with the whole harming none thing, because I have had very self-destructive habits. I still have some, I'm sure.
We all do.
Yeah. And ideally, if you are able to live in a manner that harms absolutely nobody, you pretty much have to live in a vacuum. It's impossible to exist without causing some kind of harm. In order for us to have a place to live, we are displacing wildlife.
Cutting down trees.
We're cutting down trees. We're tearing up grass. Even if you lived in a tent, you would still be,
You stepped on a spider.
yeah, you'd still be encroaching some way. If you were like living in a tree house, well, it's not really good for the tree, you know. I don't. But by learning to live in harmony with the energies that we are working with, running into, maybe causing a little, inflicting some harm simply by our existence, if we can learn to work in harmony with everything that is around us, I feel like we can help alleviate that, and maybe it's not so bad. Yes, no, maybe, I don't know.
You can say, to my way of thinking, if as long as you're not intentionally doing the
Yeah.
harm, it's more or less living as any other animal. I mean, there's animals that do harm by accident as well. With,
That's true.
Larger animals stepping on smaller ones, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth.
Like
So-
my dog stepped on my cat the other day. It was.
I mean, it's,
Cat was not happy.
as long as you do your best and whatnot, I think that would be fall within the parameters itself. It's
And
not
animals-
intentional harm. It should
That's the
be
thing,
trying to-
intention.
A lot of animals
Yeah.
in the
all
wild
comes
didn't
down to
eat.
intention.
You know,
Oh,
the lion has
Then
to.
they're splitting hairs. We had a discussion
That
one
too.
time about defending ourselves.
Right. If that.
If we have to
Yeah,
harm
that's a
somebody to
whole-
defend ourselves, is that breaking the reed? Well, is it not harming ourselves and let that harm come to us?
Right.
So
And-
I believe during the discussion we believed it was the lesser of evils to defend ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again,
Be
that's,
cognizant of your acts.
that comes back down to intent. What is your intent with this action?
Yeah.
Do you intend to let them beat the living crap out of you, or do you intend to defend yourself? You know, as long as it comes down to harming them or harming yourself, I'm gonna
Harm them.
take care of myself
Yeah.
and try to do the least amount of harm here.
When someone's attacking you, they're more likely to, after they get done,
Harm someone else.
harm someone else.
Yeah,
You're not.
that's
I was
true.
gonna
So
say,
it
from
would
what
end
everything
at
I've
that
read
point
kind of
in
went
time.
with him, what he had said,
Yeah.
you
It
know,
also
the
did-
lesser of the two evils.
It also is the definition of harm. If you rob somebody and take all the money in their wallet, is that harming them? What if they can't pay their rent and their family's gonna be out on the street?
Right.
So I mean, you really gotta look at it from not just a physical harm point of view.
Emotional, mental.
It can get
All of
really squirrely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those things that can get. We have had like 2 and 3 hour long discussions just on
I
what is the
remember.
definition of harm. You know, so yeah.
When your mother opened the spider again for the last time, I gave her an article on it, harm not. So
I'll have to go find it. I'm pretty sure I still have all that.
It's not long, but I mean, it's 8 words.
Yeah, but even so, it's so much
Everything
hangs
piles
from
into
it.
it.
Yeah.
And there's so many different definitions.
Yes.
I've asked because that was one that I had a hard time with, because you walk across my yard, you kill 1 million frogs.
Right.
You know what I mean? And okay, explain the read, and it seems like everyone I've asked has had a different definition.
And you're gonna find that. That's
So it's-
actually very normal. You know, everybody, since this spiritual path is such an individual path,
Mhm.
your meaning for that is going to be different from hers or from
Mhm.
hers or from his. So it
So-
has to matter to you though,
Right.
and it's a lot of it is intent.
Right. That's what I
Yeah.
eventually came down to.
Say,
It's-
as
it
long
has
as you
everything
didn't go
to do.
stomp through your yard, it's like, here, I wanna kill all the frogs.
Yeah, that's bad. Don't do
Yeah,
that.
Let's not do that.
I like my frogs.
Yeah.
But look at your teeth. Look at your teeth. We're made to eat.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Like I said,
We're made to
We're
do
omni-
various
we're
different
omnivorous.
things.
yeah,
Yeah.
the lion and the wolf are not going to starve themselves because they don't want to harm their food.
Well, that's why we honor what we eat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's like the definition of conservation in itself. The-
Yeah, I was gonna say that's.
A deer population out of control will ruin
But
an
unlike,
That's why
ecosystem.
hunters are the best.
unlike humans,
So,
most animals only kill
responsible
for
culling
food, not for fun.
And respectful.
Right. That's a big issue I have with
Ecosystem.
hunting. Hunting for sport,
No.
No.
I am not a fan.
Killing properly is also very important.
Yeah.
Because like the wolves were just put back on the hunting list in many states.
Yeah.
And I'm from northern Minnesota, where my family lives up in the Boundary Waters, 15 minutes away from the Canadian border. And I've lived there my whole life and barely ever saw wolves. But as soon as they started putting wolves on the hunting list, all of a sudden, now there are attacks in the city itself that's closest to us
Wow.
on their pets and stuff like that. So, and it's because, well,
We've been forced out.
if it's not necessarily that they're being forced out, you've got to think about how a pack originates. There's an alpha male and an alpha female, and a hunter is not going to know if they're targeting the alphas, and that pack cannot at all function without these alphas. They know which animal to hunt because the alpha says, hey, this is the one that's sick, let's go for this is how we're going to do it. And they follow the alpha's lead. A hunter is not going out saying, okay, this is the alpha, so we can't do this one, let's get one of the lower ones. So these packs are falling apart because they don't know what to do now.
Chaos and
Because how many of these pack members have been lost, and you know, some of them died from starvation before this, and those break down too.
I would say, even being
Sure.
raised Christian, I was always, because we grew up hunting,
Yeah.
we were always taught, do not go for, intentionally for anything that you think would be the alpha of the herd, no matter what animal it was.
Right.
Yeah.
That's, and I guess I found that really interesting compared to a lot of other people, because they're not taught the difference.
I know the kids back home, because I grew up in a really rural area, and I mean, kids were excused from school on the first day of deer season. And so I had gun racks in the trucks in the parking lot of the school, and this is in the 90s. And, you know, I didn't go, but none of the kids that I talked to were even taught about that.
I was gonna say, that's why I found it so interesting that that's how I was taught, because it's like, you know, you don't want to wipe out the entire herd
Yeah.
or pack or whatever they're grouping. You know,
Good grief, I'm gonna die.
No, not allowed.
Unfortunately.
negative, not allowed.
That's people go for the trophy animals, and they're always the biggest, and very often by taking out the biggest, you do damage to the herd overall.
I was like, ours was always, we ate or used what,
Right. Yeah.
Even at minimum, you leave the big one alone so that it makes money.
More big ones. Yes.
yeah.
At minimum.
There's actually a coexisting lesson within that. Native Americans believed that anything that was a predator, you hunted with, you worked with. And they eventually learned to, there's accounts where wolves would run with Cherokee or Apache to hunt together. And they only took what they needed. Nowadays, it's so separate. The only time you ever will see that is on reservations. Outside the reservations, there are people that are so blind that they don't see that, they just kill whatever they think they can kill. And there's a joy hunt. That's what Cherokee would call Inikwa, bloodlust. And in the bloodlust, you're
I was
blind.
taught that way, because my family is mostly Native American. So that makes more sense now.
Well, this is a perfect example of working towards living in harmony with the other beings that are on our planet, and even with the energies that are around us right now. Living in a city, it's a little chaotic, but you can find places. And one of the reasons I like Springfield is because it does have a lot of really good parks. You can, if you're having a chaos day, you can go find a park and hug a tree and just let the people stare at you. It doesn't matter.
We'll take pictures too.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like the parks, there are so many hiking trails in
Yeah.
the area.
Yeah.
So
Which is a
many.
good thing.
And you can actually get out into the woods.
Yes, this is true.
Do a
Oh.
good
Yeah.
But
I
it's
love you,
also
Mabel.
not a bad thing if you can't handle being in those spaces for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you find a place. You know, I've joked for years. I'm a city witch. Bugs, no, ew, no. Had ants crawling through my hair one time was more than enough.
Oh.
When I moved that one time.
Well, yeah. I
Um,
remember you don't like to camp.
Yeah. My very first time camping Beltane with everybody down at Usick. Primitive camping.
Yeah.
Very first time. Yeah.
She wasn't a fan. I'll just put it that way.
That's hilarious.
See, not miss those.
I know.
I wouldn't be opposed to it, but you know what I was saying was, even if you know being at the park is one thing, but going out maybe you're not comfortable with that. Have something, like you know, like I said, I'm more city. I've got plants on my porch that I try to keep. I try to keep, you know, I've got my dog that I keep.
A sacred space.
You have something,
Yeah.
no matter how small.
Does everybody understand what we mean by grounding?
Actually, push me. Anybody don't understand?
Yeah. Is anybody having going what?
Isn't grounding different for each person though?
Grounding is different for each person, but the general idea is basically the same.
Maybe for the benefit of those at home.
Yeah.
Grounding. Okay.
It's like an electrical circuit.
Yes.
If you don't complete the circuit, there's bad things happen.
Yeah,
Your
things
house
start to
burns
short.
down.
Yeah. Grounding is just, in the most basic form, grounding is allowing the energy that you may be holding on to, whether it's anxiety or tension, or if you've done a ritual and you're all charged up after ritual, it's letting that energy drain away. The most common ways of doing that: standing barefoot in your yard, hugging a tree, shower, water,
Certain
eating
stones.
something. Do what?
Stones.
Stones. Certain stones can help
Certain
you
activities.
ground. Certain activities.
Oh, now we're into the great right.
Yeah.
Well, no, not just that, but I don't know.
Well,
Different things work for different people.
when I lived in Kansas City, one of the ways that we used to do it, because you know, in Kansas City, people live in very close quarters, and we would be in like apartments trying to do ritual, and one person would absorb too much energy. So we would have them put their hands under the running faucet and just stand there for a few minutes and just kind of let the water flow over their hands and have them visualize taking that energy and letting it go. So, good.
And some people can do that too.
Some people can do that. Some people can, and I only recommend doing that if you're really sure you can handle it and let that energy go. Because I have seen people try to pull the energy off of somebody else and then not be able
Like
to
a
get rid of it
capacitor,
themselves.
eventually it will pop.
Yes. So just being able to ground, if you've had a bad day at work, it's nice to be able to just go "Bleh," and let it go. That's why I know that I used to take a shower after work when I worked at one specific place, simply because it was better for me. Because the workplace was so freaking stressful. It was better for me to come home and take a shower and let all that go. So, okay, so while we're talking about things like ethics, how many of you have ever run across somebody who told you that they could give you all their magical power if you would only sleep with them?
Oh, they
It
did.
doesn't
Oh,
work either.
It
Yeah.
does.
And they're usually really bad at it.
At what they're doing or the other?
Whoa.
The thing is, any spiritual path is going to have its weirdos and kooks who are going to try to get what they can without actually putting any energy forth and talk you into doing things that you may not necessarily want to do. You will find your leches and weirdos and predators.
Well, you hear skyclad, and boom.
Yeah, skyclad. My clothes have come off. I am skyclad. Therefore, I am magical. No.
No.
We're looking and know you
Seem to
weren't.
remember- I seem to remember a witch's ball where two guys showed up thinking they'd get laid if they were there.
Yeah, Yeah.
And then there's drink this or eat this, and it will transcend you, or do this.
Yeah.
There's always
Yeah.
Watch for the roofies.
dangers.
Oh, I've had that happen. Any place you go, you're going to find people who are predators. And like Strider said, there are those who come who are attracted to paganism because we are open, because we are free, because all acts of love and pleasure are mine. And they think, well, that means I'm going to get laid if I show up. And
Then they get upset when they don't.
They get upset when they don't. And these are the ones we want to avoid. If you ever have somebody come up and tell you, just sleep with me and I will give you all my wisdom, just don't.
Run.
Unless you just really want to.
I was gonna say, punch them because you'll save them from harming the next person that falls for it.
Yeah.
I like my line. Do you have comic books?
Yeah, there you go. It's just, it does tend to happen. Festivals, I love going to pagan festivals, and very often those festivals will have sky-clad optional places where people will be perfectly happy wandering around with no clothing on. One of my favorite things in the whole wide world is to take people to Heartland Pagan Festival who've never been before, because they do have clothing optional places, and when you're looking for your campsite, you're gonna go through those clothing optional places. And very often, if I take a new person up there for the first half hour, the expression on their face is essentially, "Oh my God, they're all naked." Yes, they are.
Sunscreen's important.
Sunscreen is very important. Anyway, also, just please don't be one of those people. Harming none. That's another way to look at this. Harming none. Do what you will. You're gonna have the guys who come up and say, "Well, I'm not hurting anybody." It's like,
yeah, you are.
That's debatable. If I tell
If
you
you're
no,
uncomfortable, you're being hooked.
yeah. If I tell you no and you keep trying to, come on, yeah, that's harm. That's negativity.
Just tell them you're a dude.
That doesn't stop some
Yeah, it
people.
doesn't always
That's true.
stop
Probably not
them.
guaranteed to work.
I've tried the whole "this is my girlfriend" thing, and it doesn't
She
always
can
work.
join too.
It's
Yeah.
okay, I got the same STD.
Yeah. That might work.
Especially nowadays that, poly is
Yeah, the poly-
becoming more
yeah.
and more a thing. Guys are all like, yes, let's be poly. And
No,
that's
that
not-
doesn't mean you get to be a slut.
Unless it's
It
agreed
does not
upon.
mean that you get to have 2 girls at one time.
Yeah.
Not all the time. Like sometimes, yes, that happens.
I mean,
but
if you're up
yeah.
for it,
Like,
yeah.
It's whatever
not
the
like-
agreement is with you
Yeah.
and your partner.
It's an
Yes,
agreement
it's
with
between you
adults,
guys.
and that's another thing. Adults
Consent.
consent.
One thing I do like seeing now, as time has gone by, yeah, we've been talking about the guy predators and stuff, and everybody.
Oh,
yeah,
there's-
do
there's
this.
women too.
Oh, there are.
Women are doing it too.
Yes, they
I'm all
are.
for it.
Yeah. Well, okay.
All for exposing it, or
No, you don't.
Let's get in.
We won't mention your name.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the women also don't just hit on the other guys and try and
Well,
maybe.
men don't just hit on women.
Well, yeah, but everyone thinks of the girls are just gonna do this to the guys too. It's like no.
No.
Again, it's comfort.
Equal opportunity.
Yeah.
It's
Hard.
a matter.
It's be aware, be cognizant. If somebody says they're uncomfortable, something's wrong.
Yeah. In other words, don't be a dick.
See,
is that the modern interpretation of harm none?
Yeah. Well, that's also the Will Wheaton version of harm none. So.
Yeah.
Has he been
That makes
venerated
a
at this
lot more
point?
sense.
I
Too.
think he's kind of pagan. Anyway, so also if you run across somebody who's doing crap like that, let other people know. Let's not keep the shameful secrets, because sometimes
That's where
Yeah.
bad things flourish.
Yeah.
Is in the dark.
Because they're like, oh well, we got away with it, so let's do it again.
yeah.
Take a big letter.
Don't
C
worry,
to their
I've been a
back
boyfriend
for
for many a people for one night. No worries.
Well, there was a
Rethink that.
Yeah.
some years ago.
Sometimes
there
not
was
even asking.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's been a couple different big names in the community that have gone to jail because of things that they have done, and they could have been stopped a lot sooner if somebody would have just said something. And I really hate that. Even most of the time, it's within families that this sort of thing is happening. But even at that, I know it's a terrifying thing to do. It's a terrifying thing to face. But sometimes you have to be the one to stand up and say something. And I would really like to see pagan spirituality and Wicca and Asatru and all the other Druidism. I would like to see them be the ones who stand up and say, no, it's not going to happen here.
Another thing, kind of that made me think of that. If they're telling you that certain people, now closed practice is one thing. There are closed practices. If someone tells you, okay, but in order to be in this faith, this path, you have to hate these people.
Oh yeah,
No.
don't do
No.
that.
No.
That's a big no.
No.
That's not spirituality.
No.
It's
I've seen that, and it's like my pet peeve.
Yeah.
Where one of the tenets of their spirituality is that they hate someone else.
That's wrong.
That is more along the lines at that point. It goes from crosses a line from spirituality to religion.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's not even that.
Yeah.
It crosses from
Cultism.
hate group.
Yeah.
Hate
Yeah.
group. If you
Yeah.
begin hating
Yeah.
someone because
Yeah.
of who they are, what they,
In the pagan,
It's okay.
yeah.
It's okay to disagree.
It is
Yes.
okay to disagree.
and it's okay to
Absolutely.
dislike. It's okay to dislike.
Yeah.
And it's okay for that group.
Well,
This is one thing I think I asked Kate about.
There's not
Because there
liking an
was one-
individual, and then there's not liking a group of people. That
Exactly,
You're just
yeah.
including everyone into that group. That's just.
But and there's a difference between like this group isn't allowed into this group because this group is specifically for this. Like we have the sisterhood group.
Exclusion.
Men are excluded from that because
Well, that's kind of different.
Giving
That's
women
that's
a
a-
place.
There's a purpose. There's
Yeah, that's
specific
a-
purpose
that's a
behind it.
We
But
don't
there-
hate the guys.
yeah, there's
We like them. A lot.
Yes.
Now that's too much.
Well,
someone messaged me and was like, "Oh, I
arose
don't want to
to
be
the-
in the sisterhood on Facebook because that's excluding the guys." I said, "It's no.
Right.
Isn't this
Have
why
our
it's
own
called a
group.
Yes.
safe
Yes.
sisterhood?
Well,
It's
The idea
for
is
safe
behind-
space. Have a safe space."
the idea behind that is working with the energies that is our own sexuality. And the guys is the same thing, working with the energies that is their sexuality.
And Steve Watt rose to the occasion. He started a men's group.
Yes.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
But I got kind of drafted into it.
Yes, you did.
But
You do both.
the point
Yeah,
of the
right.
sisterhood was that so many, especially in the pagan
Yep.
community, there were so many that weren't being heard.
Yeah.
There's so many of us that are not, that the rest of our families don't practice. So what we believe isn't being spoken of openly and commonly, you know what I mean? So we're falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
And I saw people, especially during COVID, that we're suffering for it, and not only us, but we're the backbone of the family, we're the backbone of the community. Our families are suffering because we're not being heard.
And I know one thing that we had talked about when we first started the sisterhood was there are just some things we don't want to talk about for other guys.
And I
Like
think
some people
that,
are more comfortable with other stuff than others.
I think the fact that it is a little bit restricted has given people the ability to come out and say things sometimes, but they
They're more
wouldn't
comfortable.
otherwise.
I say, I know I posted stuff in the sisterhood that I would never I wouldn't even say to my fiance.
There've been a
There's
few
probably
times
a
I've
few things
noticed
the guys
going
don't
back
want
to
you to
the
discuss in front of them.
Yes, that too. And I'm
Going
sure there are
back to
things
the
that you guys want to talk about that
predators.
I don't want to know.
Rex right now.
But yeah, that is one thing I heard. You know, if we know there's a guy in the community that is problematic,
Oh, yeah,
And
that
that's
was a big
that's
discussion.
happened a
Yeah.
few times, and that was something that I think
Open,
functioned
honest.
wonderfully. And it wasn't that
Yes.
anybody was going out of their way to bash anybody. It was a
Just be
nice,
careful.
hey,
Looking
this
out
has
for
been
each
my
other.
experience with this person.
Make an
Be careful.
informed decision.
And
Yeah.
I think the fact that the group was restricted like that allowed that a little bit more.
because
than-
I know
Thank
that
you
a
so
lot
much
of that
for that,
comes.
Kate.
A lot
Thank
of
you
that.
so much for that.
a lot of that conversation would not have happened in a public
No,
group,
it
in a
couldn't.
mixed group. We couldn't have, because there's a lot of things that, I mean, I talk all the time, obviously, but that I can't say, that you might not say, that she might not say, because there are men around.
And it's
Well,
not-
then
You
you're
don't wanna
comfortable with.
seem like
Yeah.
you're pointing fingers or that you have an axe to grind against somebody, but if it represents a risk to the community, open your mouth.
yeah.
I mean, it's,
And
I
honestly, guys,
debated for over a year on that. at this point.
Yeah, guys, if you guys see a guy doing something,
Or even
like,
a
Kick his
girl.
ass.
No, it's not
Anyone.
Either
I was
one,
kidding.
guy or girl.
Yeah.
you know,
Because there are plenty
See
of
something, say something.
female
Yeah.
spiritual predators
Yep.
out
Oh,
there
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
I came across quite a few of them while my mom was doing her nice little new age stuff when I was a kid. She
Yeah.
got screwed over I don't know how many times
Yep.
when she was
well,
first learning.
a lot of times those are just shady
So
general.
But that's what the sisterhood's there for, and it's not just men. There, like she said, there's women too, and it's a place for people to openly say, I had this experience.
Yes.
And then people can contribute, and then people can make their own decisions, is what it comes down to.
Another nice thing about private groups, not everybody wants to be public with their spirituality.
Yep.
Not everybody can.
Not everybody can.
spirituality is very intimate to me.
It is.
Right.
Very intimate. You know, I'm in this class right now to relearn my basics and stuff like that, but it's a very intimate, personal thing to me. So,
Yeah.
Well, I'll say
Yeah.
this much. When I started out, if you were known, you could get your house burned down.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, you're right.
Here-
I
here.
remember that.
Here,
Yes.
Yeah.
you're just showing up.
Well, my friend Brad did get his house burned down.
Yep.
And I mean,
So I
it's,
said it hadn't been that long.
No.
I'm not
They
that
still
old.
kill witches and thieves, and that's,
You want your
But
40s?
it's getting bad because people are speaking.
Well, one of the reasons why we started being public was so people could be.
I remember when we were getting assaulted on the street and everything.
Oh yeah.
That occupation hinders and
Yeah.
everything else as well.
I thought I was gonna get fired that one time that they had me on the news that one time. And
Oh,
my
gosh.
boss come up to me, I saw you drumming on the news last night. Yeah. That was amazing!
just so you guys know, it's not illegal for them to do that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
do not need a
unfortunately.
reason to fire you.
Not
Yeah.
in here,
Missouri
Missouri.
is-
Right.
It's
well,
becoming more and more
In
prevalent,
fire.
especially with the protections for religious, because it seems to be centered on protections again for Christianity
It's,
only.
that's what
as
our
the one
whole
that's being
religious,
pushed on,
freedom
yeah.
from religious oppression is for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why they came over here in the first place, was because they wanted to be more conservative.
Mm.
So.
Well, no,
Depending on
but
what-
we're
there
kind
was
of-
just a small minority of those that did come over in the first place, though,
Yeah.
as well. They were not.
Oh, no.
It was not all Puritans that came over.
That's
here
true.
at
There
first.
were other groups that came over, but the Puritans who came over, their whole point of being here was to establish a more conservative.
They
Place.
wanted freedom
They
for
failed.
themselves.
Yeah, they wanted
Not
freedom from
everybody
the
else.
exactly.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
other people they deported
So we're
to
kind of
fix that.
working against the headwind as it is.
I know, I'm open. I've got a pagan pride sticker on my toolbox, and I got a little placard that states that Wicca became recognized by the government in 1986 in the court case of Detmer versus, I don't know the other guy's name.
Oh, O'Brien.
No, can't remember. Detmer. Anyway, it's on my toolbox, and it's there for everybody to read.
Yeah.
And see, mine is only because I work. Current company I work for is a lot more open than some of the others I've worked for in the past. But even then, unless you know what to look for, you don't know. You know, it's you when you start this path, you learn what to look for.
Yeah. That's
And if
true.
you see something, you see somebody wearing something like this, is that a pretty stone? Or
Yeah.
and you kind of start looking.
yeah. I'll say I've noticed even at Mercy, I see a lot of people
Oh,
with
yeah.
stuff. And we just kind of give each other this look like,
Working
Oh,
for
I
the
always
nuns.
compliment them on it.
Yeah.
Just to see
Oh,
how
yeah.
they respond.
but like, especially if you see like a big wig, like I've noticed there's this like secret little look.
Yeah, I've if I'm at like Walmart or something, and someone's got a pentacle or something that is obviously a pagan related, I kind of when I'm wearing one of my I don't usually wear this one in public anymore, but I'll kind of I like your necklace and go on, and you find ways.
Yep.
I mean, we shouldn't have to.
We shouldn't, but it's still
It's still a big stigma.
still can be.
We're still in the Bible.
Dangerous.
Although this newer generation has really embraced paganism. From what
This generation.
Yeah, look at you. I'm looking at others too. Like my daughter, people that I used to work with, they are starting to come out of the woodwork more and more, and
Yeah,
they
your
are
generation's
even
got
more
it going
vocal
on.
than what we ever thought of being.
They're
They're a lot
far
more
more
open-minded.
open-minded, yes. for
Yeah.
Pretty much
So
any way, shape, or
it's
form.
starting to open up, and you know, a lot of that, unfortunately, we can thank the younger generation for it, because they're like, we ain't taking shit from nobody, and we're gonna do what we want, whether they
We're
want
gonna
us to
seek
or
out
not.
teachers.
It's the internet.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing.
Well, it is.
And that's
That's
the
the thing.
You know, when I first started, you know, I had you all here in town,
Yeah.
but when
If you were back in your hometown.
when I was back home and I started questioning, there was nothing. I was around a town of 500 people. There's 3 churches.
Yeah.
You know,
As many churches as liquor stores.
Yeah.
no, there are more churches than liquor stores. We had
Right.
we had a gas station that sold beer. The actual liquor store was 15 miles away.
Oh Lord.
Closed on all Sundays.
Yeah.
But you know, I got down here, and you know, this was in early 2000. Well, this was 2001, so yeah, really early. I had a group, you know, Greenleaf. But then I also found people online who were in the UK, in Australia, other parts of the country, who I would never have gotten to talk to.
Yeah.
And it's the internet, for better or worse, social media, is people are
It's a
able to
necessary
get
evil.
together to spread the ideas, so people aren't isolated. They feel more safe and more comfortable being
If it
out
was
and about.
not for social media, I never would have found you guys. I thought I was the only pagan in Missouri
Yeah.
for years when I was
Well, you were.
here. Y'all converted since I got here?
Well, when did you move here? You're only a couple years older than me. When did you move here?
I moved here I've been here 11 years.
Okay, no, I was here first.
That's Gretchen's. It's all Gretchen's
No, it's his
fault.
fault.
Oh, sure, why not?
You're bad influence. You're good bad influence.
Okay, so what I want to do with this is actually start working on basic ideas of pantheons. I know not everybody follows one specific pantheon, and I'm not saying that you have to or anything like that. The Chinese buffet is fine.
There are some in the group that don't actually follow any of the pantheons.
That's fine too.
Period.
Or just have vague knowledge of
Ancestor worship.
several of them through
something
D&D.
Well, okay. The best analogy I have of the gods and the goddesses is they're all just different facets. Like you're looking at a diamond, and you're looking at this one facet on the diamond, and this is your god. But over here is another god, and over here is a goddess, and over here is a goddess, and over here is a god. They're all part of the same diamond. So whomever it is that you choose to worship or not worship, it's all part of the same energy.
Do you envision this as more of a single, say, just for lack of a better term, consciousness of the universe, that these are fractions of that,
Yeah.
and
And
that
like
it's
how it
still
presents.
attached, but it can be
Yeah.
separate unto itself
It can, yeah.
for specific things.
One of the things that I did learn as a kid was if you give energy to a certain entity, you can create that entity.
Just as multi-universes.
Yeah.
That's how it was explained to me when my first introduction, 98, was that a friend of mine told me we as pagans create our own gods in our own image so that we have something higher to aspire to.
That is,
I didn't understand that for over 20
well,
years.
what that is we aren't separate from God.
Exactly.
So you can worship God as a separate entity, God or goddess and goddess, all the gods and goddesses,
Accept it as part of yourself.
or you can
Yeah,
know it
took
as a
me
part of
20
yourself.
years I thought
Yeah.
it was just horrible.
It really
Took me a
said
long time
belief
to
breeds
understand.
reality.
Yeah.
It's, I have written down some very Buddhist passage that says pretty much the same thing.
When I was a kid, my parents' first coven had their own coven god that they found. It was an ancient Babylonian god, and there was a lot of question as to whether or not this entity still had any energy. But anytime they had ritual, they would call him up and ask for his presence. Do what?
Was that Habakkuk?
No. No.
As long as you remember.
As long as you remember, yeah.
They have.
So when they started bringing him into their ritual and giving him energy, he started to manifest himself in different ways. So it was an interesting lesson for a young child to learn, but it's something that has always stuck with me.
That's
So-
a lesson every kid should be able to learn. That's not something you pick
Well-
up in Bible school.
Not really, except for maybe the
way I
boogeyman.
believe is all gods are valid.
Yes.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
Whether it be the Christian God or any of the pagan gods,
They were
they're
created for
all
something.
valid. And
They all came from
all
somewhere.
They're
have
all
power.
pieces of the same pie.
And if
Yeah.
you look at the different traditions, you'll find similarities in each one. You know, you
Oh, definitely.
you know,
Different archetypes that are the same people, same.
It's
Yeah.
like kind of what
Agreed.
just fits to you better.
What
No.
speaks to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we may go over some of the pantheons and the different gods and goddesses. I do kind of tend to lean a little Celtic. Go figure.
Yay.
But I want to go over that sort of stuff, and I want to talk about raising energy. We need to do some meditation stuff.
I was gonna talk to you about that before I leave.
Okay. And in 2 weeks, we're going to have another 101 class, and this time, that guy right over there is going to be running the show. So,
And it's gonna be different.
yes, I'm
But
sure.
not a lot different.
Well, the important thing is, I think it's a good idea for people to hear from others, not just me. It's like I tell people in my belly dance class, go take lessons someplace else and then learn something from them too. It's the same thing here. Learn from other people. Don't just learn from one person. Because what I teach you and what I might say to you and what I feel may not resonate with you. And you may find somebody else who does a much better job of communicating and making you feel like that's what you want to do. Okay?
But like you said, the discourse, we learn, you bring something up and we talk about it, we learn
Yes.
from each other.
We learn from
the
each
other
other.
students, yeah.
Which I'm really glad not everybody here is a 101 student, so that makes me happy because that means that everybody gets a chance to learn. So, and even people like me who've been doing this forever and ever, there's still stuff for me to learn. Always, 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 always. There will
That's
always
the
be
joy
stuff.
of it.
Yeah,
Also the frustration.
yeah, a little bit.
Like that old saying, you can't go a day without learning something new.
This is true.
if you do, you've wasted the day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
No, you learned it no matter what. Maybe later, like, wait, what? No.
Oh no.
I left it.
Okay, so it is 8:15, 8:16. So I think that was pretty good. All right. Yay! If y'all want to like start closing with a chant or something, we can do that too. I don't care. Or we can sing a song and.
This is the song.
No, don't you dare!
By the way, did I
So
mention?
some of us have to get home tonight.
By the way, Loki. By the way.
Yes, I picked that out. Anyway, thank you all. Hope you picked up something, and if not,
Thank
maybe you
you
found
for doing
a person.
this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I invite you all next 2 weeks, come see me.
Yes, please do. Okay. Well, thank you guys.
Be safe.
Oh, yeah. I will. Oh, yeah. Thank you. We're just going to stand here and talk now.